The second Mission Impossible movie doesn't stand up to the one that came before it because it completely ignores all of the aspects that made the first movie so interesting and instead opts for a pure action flick approach. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of Mission Impossible 2. I'm your host, Brennan Sem. Joining me this week is my father, Tory Sem. Like and subscribe down below for more nerd content and commentary. Now let's roll the intro. In Mission Impossible 2, IMF agent Ethan Hunt is sent to Sydney to find and destroy a genetically modified disease called Chimera. The film was released in 2000 and directed by John Woo. It is written by Ronald D. Moore and Brannon Braga and stars Tom Cruise, Dougray Scott, and Thandiwe Newton. Now, as always, we're going to begin with a brief, non-spoiler review. Dad, what did you think of MI2?
I thought it was a brilliant demonstration of John Woo's filmmaking ability.
It's pretty accurate.
It's definitely a different tone from Mission Impossible 1. And we talked a lot about Mission Impossible 1 last episode. I'd say Mission Impossible, not Mission Impossible 1.
It's still technically accurate.
You can definitely tell they were going for something different with this movie. So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a direct... I know that we said this statement 20, almost 30 years after the movie came out, but this is a direct rebuttal to what I said last time we talked about the first Mission Impossible. The thing that I enjoyed about that one is it actually felt like a spy movie and not really an action movie, and this is the exact opposite. This is just your standard action movie.
It sure feels that way, and it's a John Woo movie, so you're getting all the things that if you like John Woo, you're going to like this movie. Right? If you liked Face Off, you're going to like this movie.
Is that John Travolta?
Yes, that was the Travolta and Nicolas Cage vehicle. Because they have such similar body styles, they could easily just change their faces. But
I think it's got a great poster.
This isn't a Face Off episode. This is a John Woo episode. But, for a Mission Impossible sequel, you think of sequels, you think... Okay, what are these characters up to now? And of course, when I say characters, I say Ethan Hunt because everybody else died, right? This is, I think it's a decent follow-up if you're looking for a tonal shift.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely very, very distinctly different. I mean, even from the outset. I mean, the comparison between the two couldn't be more obvious. In the first movie, we open on them doing actual spy business where they are, observing a guy, and then he comes out and takes his mask off and reveals that it's Ethan Hunt the whole time. In this one, it begins with them, with the villains of the movie, causing a plane to explode. And then the first time we see Tom Cruise, he's climbing a mountain.
Right. Well, no, we see Tom Cruise at first because he's in that opening shot. So yes. I wonder, that's kind of a juxtaposition of the first one.
Yeah.
In that the first one, we see Tom Cruise doing, we see this spy event, right, where they're trying to get information. And then, of course, they rip off the mask and it's Tom Cruise. And here we actually see Tom Cruise. We think he's doing a spy thing. And then, of course, it goes off the rails pretty quick.
Yes.
It's an interesting way of getting things started, but it definitely sets the tone for everything right off the bat.
Certainly, certainly. Now, to begin, or rather to delve deeper into the movie, we're going to have to transition to the spoiler section. Before we do that, I'm going to ask you all to head on over to patreon.com/newwavenerds. If you like the work that we do here and want to help us make these videos look and sound even better, then that is the place to go. We've got lots of different benefit tiers for various amounts of money, starting as low as $3 a month. So again, if you want to help us make these even better, then that is the place to go. To go back just to that opening scene for a second here, I do want to say that it was an interesting inversion, like you mentioned. It's a cool comparison in that aspect. And I will say, we talked about Tom Cruise last time, about how, he's not exactly the most phenomenal actor. But I do want to say, in this opening scene, he played it well enough where as soon as he started talking, I was like, that's not Ethan Hunt.
Right.
I hadn't seen the movie. I didn't know anything, but I was like, I don't know what's going on, but this isn't him. And then he took the mask off, and I was like, perfect.
Well, it could have just been John Woo's Ethan Hunt. We don't know. But yeah, it is interesting because, like you say, the first one opened with some other dude, and then it becomes Tom Cruise. And this starts with Tom Cruise, who becomes some other dude, right? So the way that they shot that and did that. Now, I will say that the character, too, Dimitri, that he uses, it must be an alias that he's used before, because I think, and I don't know if you remember, but he uses that exact name. I think it's Ghost Protocol. It's one of those where he's breaking that, where it starts out where he's in the Russian prison or whatever.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember that at all. I'm not gonna lie.
So,
last time I saw that movie was when it came out in theaters in like 2011 or whatever.
So there's some kind of consistency there, I suppose. And when we're talking about these movies, it's kind of fun to kind of get that consistency going, and maybe it does kind of set the scene for future movies a little bit. I will say that. If we talk about directors, right? We had De Palma for the first one.
That's right. I forgot that was him.
He was asked to come. From what I heard, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I believe he was asked to come back for a sequel and didn't want to do it. So they got John Woo because Cruise liked John Woo movies. Seen some of them recently.
If that isn't an indictment, I don't know what is.
At the time, and we've always had the discussion how Tom Cruise wants to be a superhero. When was Face Off? Because I can't remember if that's so Face Off is 97. So it's, I believe, you're looking at that and you're seeing, Cruise probably saw this and ran with it kind of thing. Hard Target, there's our Van Damme movie. We have to get around to that one eventually, I suppose.
That's also got a really good poster. These
definitely.
classic posters from like the 80s, they're great all the time.
But there's that John Woo style for sure.
Yes.
That's in this. And I will say, I believe what I heard is John Woo is the only director who wasn't asked to come back for a sequel. So, maybe that colors the way this movie feels too a little bit, in that it is so much different than the other ones.
Definitely. And so here's what I will say about this story is that I think... obviously, the way that it's executed is not phenomenal. I don't think it's, by and large, a really good movie. But the actual sort of story conceit of it, that's probably not the right word, because it's not the Chimera necessarily. But the main villain, played by Dougray Scott, Sean Ambrose, the idea of this character to me is fairly interesting, because he's a character who, for a while, when Ethan was gone or whatever, this guy like took over that position. He wore the Hunt mask a couple times before, we see it in the original thing.
Right.
And throughout the movie, we see the fact that he knows Ethan. He has studied him. He knows what he's going to do. I think that conceit is really interesting, but that's not the move to me that you make in the second movie.
Right.
That's like a fourth or fifth movie. It's kind of a meta narrative of what does Ethan do when the villain knows exactly everything that he's going to do at all times?
Well, you're doing the Moriarty,
Sherlock
type thing.
Yeah, it's
right?
weird that you remembered Moriarty, but not Sherlock.
Yeah, maybe that says something. And I don't feel like they played with that a whole lot. They brought it in enough, right, just to kind of point out that we know this guy and we know he's a jerk, and Ethan's able to say, yeah, I've worked with him a couple times. Didn't have the right kind of style for me, that kind of thing.
The only time that it really plays out and affects the story is in the heist in the middle, because they're doing two opposing planning sessions, and Ethan's team first pulls up the layout, and they begin talking, and then it cuts to Sean Ambrose, who is like, Ethan Hunt always favors misdirection over a direct attack.
Right.
He's not going to go where it's heavily armored. I bet he's going to go up top. And then the next scene is Ethan saying, we're going to go in through the top, But yeah, that's the only place where that really happens. And I think you could have had a decent movie if maybe that was a little bit more of the focal point rather than the crazy action stuff.
Well, and if you think about it too, you could even, this villain could have been a villain for a while, right? If you really were thinking franchise in a way, he could almost be the what is James Bond's Spectre,
Blofeld.
Blofeld, yeah. He could be the
Christoph Waltz,
the antithesis of what we've got here. Dougray Scott, of course, does a great job being a over the top jerk, I guess we could say.
Definitely.
But I don't know if you noticed this. I don't know if we're ready to start talking cast yet, but he was going to be Wolverine. He was going to be Hugh Jackman, but this movie ran over. So I don't know. We have to decide. I mean, we were discussing this the other day, how it's going to be tough to replace Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
Yeah.
So it would have been a whole different thing, I think.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to make the joke later about how Stanley Kubrick changed the whole landscape of superhero movies. Because one of the reasons that this went over is because Eyes Wide Shut went over, and Cruise was filming that in London. So thanks Stanley Kubrick because we had the best.
He fixed it for us because I think maybe the verdict's still out. I don't know, but I think Hugh Jackman's our man for Wolverine.
I mean, there's no way to test a counterfactual, but I think it's telling the fact that he's the only X-Man that got 3 solo movies.
Right, you bet. And he's the one that everybody cried when he died. So
yeah. R.I.P. And then he's back now. It's fine. He's never gonna die. They're gonna bring him back for 30 more movies. I really have to talk about this. My first impression of this movie, after the plane explosion scene, immediately you're like, okay, this is a very different movie because, again, action sequence right at the beginning. And then we see Tom Cruise climbing the mountain, and we're like, okay, he's having some fun here. This was definitely his idea.
Yes.
And then we get to the top, and this is when he has the scene where he's like, this is your mission if you choose to accept it or whatever.
Right.
And it's in the cool sunglasses, and he throws them off, and then they explode into the title sequence.
Well, of course.
As soon as that happened, my first thought was, this is the most 2000s movie ever made.
I'm going to say this is the most John Woo movie ever made. We've seen some stuff in this doesn't compare to Blues Brothers 2000.
Oh, well, nothing can.
But no, when we're looking at this, yes, they are definitely taking a shot at updating the IMF process. There, shooting the missile at him and stuff. And it is interesting because, maybe this is a spoiler alert for the only movie, but I believe this is the only movie where he's officially in the IMF.
Oh,
Every
really?
other movie, he's got something where he's outside the lines of things, right?
Fascinating.
So obviously, maybe they thought that was the issue with this movie, but and they had to correct that.
They're like, what the heck? He's playing by the book? Well, he doesn't even do that at the end because he goes against the orders or whatever.
Well, of course he does.
But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. Now, I think this movie, when was it filming? I think it was 98 or 99.
It must have been, yeah.
So it's interesting to me because especially towards like the end, and I know we're jumping ahead a bit, but we've got the still here of him riding on the motorbike. He's wearing the sunglasses. He's got the leather jacket. Everybody in that final scene, heroes and villains, except for Thandie Newton or whatever, is wearing like black and in most cases black leather. Mm-hmm. I saw that and I was like, this feels like it's a reaction to The Matrix.
Right.
But this would have been filming before that movie had come out. Was there just something in the air where everybody was like, black leather is the way to go?
I suppose. I didn't get into that fad. Of course, I would have been, let's see, I've been 20, 25, yeah.
Oh, you would have been
I should have
perfect
been
age.
nailing it.
Yeah.
But no, I never did. Actually, I should say that. I did have a black leather coat. But yeah, when you're watching these, you're definitely seeing that. And now that you say that, I've got to go and look at some contemporary movies and see. I will say, John Woo and his coolness, right? I can think back to even Face Off, right? They all had a cool style to them. Everybody had their fun jackets and that kind of thing. There was another movie, I think, and it leads me into a Nicolas Cage movie that I think was right around the same time called Snake Eyes, where he was kind of I wouldn't say corrupt necessarily, but he was kind of an off-beaten cop, and he's kind of stuck in...
Okay, well, this is a terrible poster.
98, there you go. And you see, he's kind of got a style to him as well, and stuff. So when you're watching those movies of that time, and we could probably just go back to...
it's another De Palma movie.
What was the? That's where it made me think of that recently. We could go back to Virtuosity.
Oh yes,
and there was some style there. Of course, the Russell Crowe. The first thing he had to do was get a nice suit on, and stuff. So there was that aspect right around then where it definitely you had to have that kind of style going. So.
Yeah, I just don't think it works very well. It's weird because again, this is 2000. This is the same year as Hugh Jackman movie that we were just talking about, X-Men. Right. Obviously, black leather all over that too. It's just weird.
Well, what do you want? Yellow spandex?
To be fair, it would have looked really bad in the 2000s. It would have looked bad.
Yeah, they've nailed it now, but yeah.
Yeah. So this back to Mission Impossible 2.
Yes.
I do have to mention, we talked very briefly, or we mentioned Thandie Newton. Oh, yeah, here it is. It does say Thandie in the IMDb credits there.
Ah, okay.
I do not for 1 second believe the relationship and the chemistry between her and Ethan Hunt. I don't at all.
There is actually a thing that I was watching where they were kind of at odds with each other a little bit. Like they couldn't quite, like she couldn't quite figure out the dialogue. And there's the scene on the balcony.
That's because it's bad.
Yeah, that too. And I think that was it. I think she kind of said it just wasn't working for her. So there's the scene on the balcony when he comes back and tells her the reason she was recruited, was to go find her old boyfriend, and that sort of thing.
Right.
And he does would it make you feel better if I didn't like it? And she said, yeah. And he says, feel better. Right. So that's a great line. Sure.
I was going to say that was actually one of the good lines of the movie.
But they were filming that scene, and Thandie in an interview said that she just wasn't feeling it. So they actually reversed roles, and Tom did her role. And then she kind of read his lines and stuff. And she said that kind of helped her feel that a little bit. But I think that there was something more to the fact that, there wasn't a lot of chemistry there.
Yeah.
And I saw in the trivia, his wife, Nicole Kidman or whatever, kind of suggested bringing her in. Now, I like Thandie Newton, and I know you never got around to watching it, and now it disappeared, but she was on that Westworld series.
Yeah, I'm really upset I didn't watch that one.
Right. And I've seen her in some other things, too. I can't remember specifically off the top of my head. But
she's in Solo.
That's right. But it's that. Well, she dies. Spoiler alert. We haven't.
She does? Oh,
yeah,
that's
because
right.
she's Woody's
the girl. Yeah,
teammate. You don't know him as Woody. But,
Woody Harrelson?
Well, of course you know Woody Harrelson.
Isn't that his name?
I'm thinking, I forget that in Cheers he was named Woody, and that's his real name.
That's just lazy.
That was confusing. So, yes, I think that she does a decent job, but yeah, you're right. There isn't necessarily a lot of chemistry there. Now, and that's one of the things even moving forward with, and I don't know if this is a Tom Cruise thing. Obviously, you think of Jerry Maguire and stuff. He knows how to do the romantic chemistry kind of thing. But it does feel like in these movies, he never quite knows how his character is supposed to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Because even moving forward, I remember being a little confused who his wife was, who he's dealing with at the time, and maybe that's kind of a holdover from James Bond movies where there's a new Bond girl every movie, or something like that. But I just felt like it never quite sunk in, and I don't think he does a good job with that in these movies.
I don't think so. I will say I do. In the more recent ones, I do believe the bit of the chemistry between him and Haley Atwell.
Right.
But that's probably helped by the fact that she's a good actress.
Right. Yeah. We like Haley Atwell.
And he's a little older, and he's at that point he'd done 6 other movies,
that's
so he's
true.
got no choice. But yeah, no, that is weird. I do as far as her role in this story and how it factors into the whole Dougray Scott of it all. That's another aspect where I like the way Scott's character plays it, because he knows from the beginning that she's onto something.
Right.
He knows that she's not just there because she loves him or whatever. He tells right from the very beginning. There is that scene which sort of throws a wrench in that, where I'm a little confused as to why he reacts such, but it's when he has the Ethan Hunt mask again,
right?
And she tries to kiss him, and then he takes it off and is grimacing and almost
that's his confirmation or whatever. But yeah, you got to think that it, like you said, I feel like he's supposed to be showing us that he believed it, because he knew when she did the thing with the jacket pocket.
Yes, that's what I was
he
just
knew
gonna
that
say.
it was in the wrong pocket, right? So he kind of knew something was going on there. Now again, I don't know whether I don't know what his game plan it was there if it wasn't Ethan Hunt, and all of a sudden she comes around, there's this strange
like,
dude
"What's this
around the
guy?"
corner. Yeah, that would have thrown things off. Maybe that was his plan all along. But
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a little weird. I think this movie, like by and large, is and this is rude to say, one director and like maybe one or two drafts away from being like an actually pretty good movie.
right.
It just feels very dated, and the dialogue and the plot lines feel so lackluster, I guess.
It is you can tell it's a rework of the original in that, one, we talked about the opening scene. Two, Dougray Scott's doing what Ethan Hunt did in the first one, right? Because he showed up dressed as Phelps.
Yeah.
So that he would know if the wife was causing problems, so that they're kind of doing that. Now, I will say one of the things that you see in the trivia is that John Woo turned in a 3.5-hour cut.
Ugh.
Was his first cut.
Man, that's like the Dune Part 2.
Yeah. And the studio, of course, said, no, it's got to be 2 hours. And there's something else in the trivia, and I feel like I heard this in another interview where towards the end, he was kind of locked out of the editing room, and Tom Cruise just kind of took over the editing.
That's interesting.
So that's why it feels maybe a little disjointed, I suppose. But because there's lots of reasons to do that. One, the director's going nuts.
Sure.
And we just can't keep him tamped down. Or Tom Cruise was just being a jerk and taking it over, right? There could be any number of reasons that happened. But I think that maybe that's why this one maybe comes off a little disjointed in areas, and the things that we get out of it are all the little important beats that are supposed to call back to the first one in a way,
When you first said that, I was sort of surprised, the thing about Tom Cruise having like the final say in the editing room or whatever. But then I remembered he did produce it.
Yes,
he did
this
produce
is still his production company, like we talked about in the first one. He owns this. This is his baby, kind of thing. So,
was it just like him? How do I phrase this? Was it like a solo production thing, or do you know if he had set up like his own production, quote unquote, studio to do this?
I think that I heard, and I know at some point it was a Tom Cruise production studio,
okay,
type of thing where he was pulling in these movies and doing them. And I'm awful sure that it was with these movies that he started that. I mean, it was right around him here that he got working on those that in that way, building his own little production empire. But,
yeah, Cruise Wagner Productions. I've been really interested in stuff like that because I recently found out that Humphrey Bogart also had his own production company, Santana Productions.
Well, they always say it, and you see it on TV shows. As soon as a TV show is out and popular, the first thing that happens is you get the negotiations, and you start to see the actors as producers.
Right. That happened with Stewart on TNG.
Right.
Star Trek TNG.
All of those shows, and of course we can go back to Big Bang, where I think they all had producer credits and stuff like that towards the end. But there is a lot more to it in that instance. Now, of course, you know this more than I do, but there's executive producers who are name only, and some executive producers actually do stuff, and some of them are only there so that they get paid more.
Right.
And that kind of thing. But I do think that in this instance, he's not necessarily just the actor's the producer because his agent signed him that way, but it's more along the lines of this is his production company that they're going in there and doing these things.
Right.
And building these movies and trying to build these franchises.
Yeah, continuing the trend that we talked about in the first one where he was like, let's make this movie. So
Right.
I think it is fair. It was maybe a bit of a harsh reaction on my part, for a harsh gut instinct on that, but it does make a little bit of sense. One question, though, I do have about that is, whose decision was it to make every other scene slow-mo? Was that John Woo?
I will, if we compare the other movies, I'm going to say that's a John Woo thing because he didn't come back for any of the other movies. And
the slow-mo stops?
The slow-mo seemed to stop, right? Now, obviously, there's action. You always get the, when Tom Cruise is doing his crazy stunt, they'll have the slow-mo of his reaching out to catch something.
Sure.
That's a thing. But not to this level, right? And then, of course, the other John Woo staple is the doves, There's always a scene of the doves flying by.
I was very curious about that, especially when Tom Cruise is hiding on the ceiling or whatever, and there's that dove just cooing right next to him.
Right.
I was a little curious about that. I don't know. I cannot get over the slow-mo because I've probably said this on lots of other reviews before. I'm not a big fan of slow-mo. It has to be if it's going to be used, it has to be used very, very sparingly. The only exception to that rule, in my opinion, is like 300, which I think uses it really well. But the thing that's so irritating to me about it in this movie is that there's two different types. He either slows it down, but increases the frames per second so that it stays smooth, or decreases it so it's super choppy.
Right.
I hate it. If you're going to do it, pick one, but just don't do it. That's my opinion.
Well, we have to go back and watch the nuance. What's he trying to say in those things, other than the fact that, like I said, maybe that was why it was 3.5 hours, and if they would have put it all to normal speed, it would have been fine. Yeah. And we got a full story, but instead they just started cutting.
Yeah. There's another trope of action movies. I think, as far as I can remember, it's really only used once. But I hate the trope so bad that as soon as it happened, I couldn't think about anything else for like 3 minutes, and I had to rewind. But it's where we see the exact same action from like 6 different camera angles.
Oh, yeah.
I hate that so much. And it's right at the end in the motorcycle
when he's spinning around on the motorcycle. When he goes past that car and he spins around, and I get you get some kind of vertigo there because you're watching him spin in 9 different directions.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he does the... that's pointed out in the Last Action Hero. He shoots the gas can. He's like, normally they blow up at that point. Well, in this case, it did. All he has to do is shoot by the gas. Yeah.
One time, he doesn't even shoot a gas canister. It's hazardous waste, and it explodes into flames.
You'd be surprised how explosive some of that hazardous waste can be.
It was great. Well, because he zoomed in and showed that it was hazardous waste, and then it was just a fire explosion. Oh, man. There's explosions all over the place. There's a time when a car gets hit by a semi and literally bursts into a million pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm glad to say that I've never been in an accident that intense where I've been T-boned by a semi, but I've seen some happen, and I don't think the car typically explodes.
I do not see the giant explosion, no.
Yeah.
But, we don't know what they had in the trunk, though. They might have,
That's a good point.
Might have had some of that hazardous waste in the vehicle, too.
That's a good point. I mean, we did see Tom Cruise have hand grenades, so it makes sense that these bad guys would, too.
You never know.
Actually, I had forgotten about this until just now, but speaking of that bunker, an actor who I wasn't expecting to see in this, but I was glad did appear, is Brendan Gleeson.
Right.
He is great. I mean, in this movie, he doesn't have a lot to do, but just in general, he's great.
Yeah, he's been around quite a bit, and he's one of those things, that you kind of see him and you know him, and he always plays a fun role, at least that I've seen.
He's really good in the Banshees. I think it's Inisherin, but it might be Inisherin. I don't know. I think it's an Irish word.
Depends how Irish you are.
But it's him and Colin Farrell. So good. I think it's on... Oh, not anymore.
I saw a trailer for this and never got around to watching it. So.
It is surprisingly good. I will say I didn't expect to like it. But yeah, so the whole thing with him and Dougray Scott, the scene itself was not fun. It was dumb. The idea...
And the fight scene...
This strikes me, and again, it's 2000, it's a different time, but the idea that you could, commit this crime and sell this, and then somehow come into possession of 51% of the stocks that own a company, and it wouldn't be flagged by like the FTC or something, is insane.
Well, they're based out of Australia, so who knows how their Federal Trade Commission
That's
works.
true. They do things different down under.
The Queen's prison colony may not be able to handle that kind of stuff. So,
yeah.
I mean, yes, it is the evil Bond villain thing.
Yes.
Obviously, it's not quite knocking California off the map so you can have better land.
Yes.
But it's definitely
Shout out Gene Hackman.
the evil villain. I'm going to take over the world with these stock options and stuff. Now, I'm assuming, and we don't say that, I thought at one point he might have said, various shell companies or something like that. So maybe they're playing with that a little bit. But then, like you say, at that point, you don't have 51% ownership if you've got it spread among all these little offshoots and stuff. So
Well, and especially with a company like this that would, I mean, after, by the time his master plan comes into fruition, I would think that there would be like investigators who would be looking into this and like auditors or whatever.
well, and even then, somehow they did it wrong because Thandiwe was able to get to the edge of the shoreline and she wasn't going to infect anyone in the ocean.
Yeah. Well, they said they dropped her off in the middle of the city. Yeah. How far did she walk?
That little thief can move. She was able to get out of there quick. I mean, I've never been to Sydney, so who knows? Because that's where they were, right? They were Sydney, Australia. I thought so.
Yeah, because you see the Opera House about 8 times in this movie.
But it is interesting because their plan wasn't going to work out the best anyways. Now, granted, I assume that they had some of her blood, so they could recreate this stuff.
Right. Well, and so I don't understand, how does the virus, or it is a virus, right?
Yes.
Whatever. It's something different that we'll find out. Anyways, we'll talk about that in a minute. How does it what's the word I'm looking for? Move between people?
Yeah. I don't know.
Is that the right word?
It obviously isn't airborne unless it's airborne after the symptoms are starting to see, because they say 20 hours and he's on the plane. So it's not like he thought he was going to infect the whole plane.
Yeah.
In the beginning, right? He shot himself up with it to transport it.
But it's also weird that like when they're in the scene, after like the heist takes place, when she injects herself with it, the gun is on the ground in the middle, and Dougray, Scott, what's his actual character name? Sean Ambrose. He's telling his henchmen to stop shooting because, the gun will explode and they'll infect everybody. It's both like transmittable through liquid and aerosol.
I have no clue. Maybe it was a drop. If it splashed, it would be a big splash zone. I don't know.
Whatever.
That was also you're right. I think what he says is infecting everyone, but of course you also don't want to blow up the last vial of it if that's your business model. So,
excuse me.
I think that obviously we're evil villain-esque when we do this kind of thing, but again, right off the bat, the plan seems foiled. So.
Really quick, I kind of want to talk a little bit, and we're going to transition to a separate spoiler warning because I kind of want to talk a little bit about how this ties into the new one. Do you have any final thoughts on the second Mission Impossible movie?
I'm sure I'm forgetting things that I knew I wanted to talk about.
I know
this is one of them movies. And so if anybody's leaving now because they don't want to be spoiled on the new one, I'm going to say it's worth a watch. I mean, it's definitely worth of course, then again, we love movies, so we don't mind watching any movie, I guess. So I wouldn't turn anyone away from it, but just know that what you're getting is a John Woo movie from the 2000s.
Definitely. Oh, before I want to talk about Ving Rhames, Luther.
Oh yes, that's who we got to bring up.
Yes, it is funny seeing him run around at the horse track and stuff. It was hilarious. So I feel like the plan is not very well put together if you have to have a guy run inside from outside to give somebody a camcorder just to run back to the van to make sure that the video is transmitting.
Well, yeah, but they don't know what silly little fake data card they're going to be running with, so they had to wait until they knew which data card it was before they could get the right camera.
8 cameras in the van.
Or maybe they just happen to have the right camera.
Sure. But I thought it was funny. After he hands the camera off and he runs back to the van to get the video, he closes the door and he's like breathing heavy.
Right.
I was like, dude, you ran like 30 feet. I'm sure it's hot outside, but
we're not messing with Ving.
I mean, you're supposed to be a spy.
I mean, if you're talking about spoilers, he's got issues in the current movie. So
yeah. Oh man, I wish that he actually did more here. Ving Rhames. He was pretty ancillary.
I mean, we loved him in the first one, and we love him throughout, right? Mm-hmm. I can't remember now. I mean, does he make an appearance in every one?
I will find out.
He definitely should if he doesn't, because he's our national treasure. But.
Yeah, he's the best part. Okay, let's see. Mission.
He's in quite a few of them, I know.
Did I spell it wrong? Why is it saying there's no options?
You broke it.
I don't know. But in any case,
We need to get you your Chat GPT because there's a colon maybe after mission.
Oh, is it? Oh, actually, yeah, that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. That's a good call. I didn't realize there's supposed to be a colon in the name. There is a line that is absolutely terrible. He is in everyone.
It sure appears that way.
In a video game called Operation Surma. In any case, there's a line from Anthony Hopkins, who is in this movie for all of 3 minutes, where it's right in the beginning where, they're talking about trying to get Thandie Newton involved in this scheme. Yes. And Ethan's like, it's going to be difficult. And he says, very difficult. And then Anthony Hopkins goes, well, the team isn't, it's not difficult, it's mission impossible. So difficult should be nothing for you. Dumb line.
Which I did read trivia that I think that was supposed to be Sir Ian McKellen.
I'm glad it wasn't.
Instead of our boy there, Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Well, so this would have been around maybe close to the time that Lord of the Rings was filming, right?
Actually, I think what it was he was busy with X-Men.
Oh, that's right,
Could be
2000.
wrong.
Well,
now I'm not exactly.
Well,
sure
yeah, because this would have been filming in '98, which is around the same time as X-Men.
He was busy with a much better movie.
And then there's another. This movie's filled with terrible lines. There's another one. It's at some point when Thandie's in. I think it's when she first goes to Dougray Scott's house, and Tom Cruise says something like, "She's a snowball that we just threw in hell, and now we'll see if she's got a chance."
You say terrible. I say, and I just told people to watch this movie, so you got to stop with the terrible part.
I know we're gonna have different opinions.
I say that you've got to go for this is a John Woo movie, and you've got to enjoy it for that. In addition to the fact that it's Mission Impossible.
Yeah. I mean, watch it if you want. That's the most endorsement I'll give it. Watch it if you want. If you're doing a rewatch of the whole series, go right ahead. If you're gonna watch one, watch the first one. One Mission Impossible movie, then watch the first one, not the number one. Anyways, now we are going to talk a little bit about the most recent Mission Impossible movie. What's it called? Final Reckoning, I think.
Yes.
Just came out, like a month ago now?
I feel like you're dating us, but I feel like
somewhere around that. We'll just say it's 2 months then, so then nobody will know.
Give or take.
In any case, so if you don't want to be spoiled about that new movie, which I actually hope is streaming on Paramount in a few months because I really want to see it again, actually. It
should be.
Then turn off now, and we will see you guys next time to talk about Mission Impossible 3. All right. So it is the last one, right? It's not number 7 where it's revealed that the Chimera that they were searching for in this movie is not actually a biological agent. It was a computer virus, because that was the entity.
Now, is it that, or is this Mission Impossible 3 where it's the computer virus?
Oh, is it? Am I getting them mixed up?
Now, see, we're going to talk Mission Impossible 3 soon, and I want to rewatch it, and I haven't rewatched it for quite a while. So I could be wrong on that. Now I'm forgetting.
I could be wrong. It's probably easier to just do this from Wikipedia. But I feel like I remember them saying Chimera specifically for something.
Okay.
But like I said, I could be wrong because I've never seen the third one. Because this is Philip Seymour Hoffman. What the heck is he trying to do here? The real rabbit's foot. What the heck is the rabbit's foot?
The rabbit's foot. The rabbit's foot was...
although it's not stated what it is.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it's a MacGuffin.
A MacGuffin, yeah. So maybe...
I thought it was a computer thing, but I could be wrong on that. I thought it was a computer
Okay,
virus.
maybe that's it, and then I'm confused. Maybe I'm just wrong. Okay. Well, then I know that they name drop Chimera in that very specifically, because I remember hearing that, and I was like,
that's
what
a good
movie's
point.
that
I
from?
mean, it may be, I think they, at one point, aren't they kind of just going through his list?
Yeah, they've got...
And that kind of thing. So that may have been where it came up to.
That movie, aside from just being a pretty good movie in its own right, great clip show.
Yes.
Great clip show, showing all the greatest hits.
It definitely is and I don't know if Tom Cruise is old enough to say we're done with the franchise, but it definitely is a wrapper on the franchise.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Because that was their whole point. I mean, we talked about it last week with Don Lowe coming back. I think that was his name. It definitely is a member berry for all of that old stuff, right?
Yeah, so I guess I was wrong in saying that this was really an especially spoilerific session. I mean, it technically was because we talked about the fact that it's a thing.
We've talked.
But not as spoilery as I expected it to be. But I'm excited for the third one.
Well, hopefully, you didn't stay around just because you thought you were going to get spoiled, because then you're disappointed.
What I would like to see, and this is not the Mission Impossible Final Reckoning review, which by the time we get to that point, hopefully it'll be streaming. I don't know. That's a long ways away. If they do, or more likely when they do a Mission Impossible 9, I would like to see Ethan Hunt take like the sort of Kittredge role.
Right.
Like he's not the main guy, but he's sort of the handler, I guess, of the team. Or the John Voight role from the first one, except he doesn't turn evil.
I think, and that's going to come down to Tom Cruise, right? When he's finally ready to stop doing this stuff, then I think that's the case. Because I don't know if, and I could be wrong on this. I mean, obviously he's a brilliant actor. He's been around forever. He starred in many movies that have made lots of money and everybody loves.
Definitely knows what he's doing.
So he's got a pretty good head for that kind of stuff. But sometimes, even an actor like that, which you hope is doing it for the right reasons, wouldn't know when to stop.
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially when you've got a thing, which, I mean, like we've said a bunch this episode, this is his baby. This is the thing that he started. He's been doing for, like I said, almost 30 years now. I mean, right. I would imagine it would be pretty difficult to let that go.
Well, and I feel like Tom Cruise is always trying to do some sort of a franchise because he's done Mission Impossible is the one that's worked. I mean, he had that Mummy thing that was supposed to kick off a franchise. Yeah. Then he had the Jack Reacher stuff, which, give or take, the movies are decent, but that was supposed to kick off a franchise, but the second one never took off to keep that one going, I believe. That's one that maybe I could see becoming more of an older Tom Cruise vehicle if he wanted to revisit those. And there's plenty of Lee Child books that he could go off of for that if he wanted to keep doing a franchise there. But
Well, and so here's what I'll say about that is I don't remember anything of the Reacher movies. I know that I saw the first one in theaters. That's probably the problem with them. So. Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is that I think the real problem with that is people like Grandpa, who loves the books and sees the movie and says Tom Cruise isn't Jack Reacher.
Right.
Which is understandable because Tom Cruise is like 5 foot tall.
Right.
And Jack Reacher is supposed to be like a 6'8" maniac with meat hooks for hands or however.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's because of that. I think, again, I don't remember anything. Those movies might be good, but I don't know if they can pass the perception of the fact that it's a joke in Family Guy. Everybody knows that Tom Cruise isn't exactly a tall gentleman.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how much the Mission Impossible movie made. I would think it's far enough by now that we should know more or less.
Yeah, the most recent one, I'm awful confident did some good stuff. Well, and part of that too is that it is a continuation of the previous movie, so people are definitely going to be going out and catching it. Right?
Well, yeah, because the first one, I mean, it is very clearly a part one. I mean, like it ends with them getting the key, right?
Yeah, it ends with a continue or cliffhanger type of thing in a way. It ends with we didn't solve the problem in the first part one. So.
Well, actually, I mean, it is actually kind of interesting. So, according to Screen Rant, 8 made $165.3 million, and part 1 made $172.
Yeah.
Which is surprising to me because I mean the seventh one wasn't incredible, but I was interested enough to definitely be like, I need to see what happens after this.
Right.
Now that's obviously just domestic and not worldwide. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, I could definitely see him making at least 3 more, considering the fact that it's like a $4 billion franchise or something like that.
Zemu Willing? Xenu? Is that Scientology?
Oh, man. I don't know.
Zenu Willing, we will have many Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I don't know. The Church of Scientology is going to get the channel shut down.
We probably don't want it.
In any case,
linger on that.
I'm very happy. It's clearly working out for him. He's rich and famous beyond wildest dreams. But yeah, any closing thoughts before we finish the episode officially?
No, I mean, like you have mentioned, I think I'm looking forward to watching Mission Impossible 3. I haven't watched it in a long time. And after this one, I'm looking forward to going back to a more, I don't want to say grounded because these aren't grounded, but
Sure.
a more, action,
Reasonable.
spy movie vibe. Not an action movie vibe. So
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for 3 because, I mean, Mission Impossible 3 is the only reason that I wanted to watch this. Because
Right.
I mentioned when we reviewed the first one, I've heard from my manager at a previous job about 1,000,000 times that Mission Impossible 3 is really, really good. And so I'm doing this specifically for 3 and for Ghost Protocol because, again, like we mentioned last time, that one definitely perforated into the pop culture a little more than the other ones.
You bet.
So I'm really excited. I hope you guys are enjoying this little retrospective series. We got, 4 more after this? This is going to be a lot of Tom Cruise talk.
Yeah, we're going to keep on rolling.
Definitely a lot of Tom Cruise. Now let's see what we got coming up on the calendar. Next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about Jurassic World Rebirth, the first introduction into the 3rd Jurassic trilogy. Yes, that's a proper way to describe that, right?
The 3rd Jurassic trilogy?
Yeah, because we got Jurassic Park and then Jurassic
first part
World.
of the
Because this is like a
third-
reboot
yes,
with
that's
everything
right.
else. Yeah, that was a really awkward way to say that. But in any case, it is true.
Well,
It's
the
what we're
movies are
doing.
getting more and more awkward as they go, so
Yeah,
we're
you can
accurate.
definitely say that. So that's Tuesday, and then Thursday we're going to be back to talk more Superman. We're going to take a look at the fourth volume of Joshua Williamson's ongoing Superman series, Rise of the Superwoman, the first of the All-In initiative. Really liking it so far. Those comics have been really fun to review, so if you're a Superman guy, I would definitely recommend picking those up and stay around. I do that every time. Every time I try to say one thing and I mix the words around. But in any case, we're going to end here before this goes even more off the rails. Subscribe down below for more nerd content and commentary. And I will see you guys on Tuesday.